Carter, Chris, and I are here for the Florida Squeeze, and I am joined by Dave Trotter of Voting Trend. And if you are not checking out Dave's videos at Voting Trend, and you're not subscribed to the Substack at Voting Trend, you're missing out on so much. Dave, thank you for joining us. Before we get into Orange County, tell us a little bit about what you're doing over at Voting Trend right now, as we are at the moment 13 days from the election.
Well, and I was going to say, same thing with your videos on the Florida Squeeze on the YouTube channel now, doing more of those, because it really gets into the changes county by county and in these neighborhoods and whatnot. Usually I do Florida stuff, but I've kind of moved into other states as well, but you could probably say still do a lot of Florida stuff. So basically looking at voting trends, numbers, focus on campaigns and elections. So after the election, be just focusing on the lay of the land and what's going to happen as far as candidates, what seats are likely to flip or whatnot. So, I mean, it's mostly a data-driven channel that just looks at the state of affairs and tries to give an extremely impartial view of what's happening, even though when it comes to partisanship, I am extremely partial. So, yeah.
So, you and I first met in 1995. And at the time, and you were living in Orange County. At the time, Orange County was, besides Duval, the most Republican urban county in the state. And Duval, as we've talked about repeatedly in our videos on this site and in our analysis, is Jacksonville is more like Birmingham or Charlotte or other large big southern cities. So it's moved towards the Democrats kind of in the same way those places have. Which means it's still kind of conservative, but it's part of just kind of changing cultural attitudes and changing professional jobs in the market. Orange County, on the other hand, has gone through a complete transformation. So let's talk for a few minutes about that, Dave. By 2000, we began to see the Democrats get competitive. Al Gore won Orange County in 2000. It is one of the few counties in the country that Gore carried in 2000, but Clinton had not carried in 92 or 96. And I believe it is by far the largest county, population-wise, that happened. He was the first Democrat to carry Orange County, I believe, since Harry Truman in 1948. So, or maybe even been FDR in 44. I think maybe Dewey carried Orange in 48. But in any event, it was for over half a century. And since then, it has consistently voted Democratic for presidential, began flipping in state races as we got toward the end of the 2000s. 2010 was the first time it had gone Democratic for governor since 94. And now it's just kind of put on bigger margins. Seats in the legislature have flipped. So what happened?
Well, I mean, I think there are a few things, right? It was a Republican county in the past, and a lot of that has to do with just some changing of just, I think, partisan attitudes, but then also changing of, just growth within the county. Because I think you have to take, let's say, the West and the Southwest Orange County Republican change to a more Democratic change, even though that's still kind of 50-50. And then you have to look at Winter Park, right? And Winter Park has just kind of had an old money type of, wealthy Republicans, that many of those have just either have died off and their places have been bought by more liberal Democrats, or you just see a lot of those people in the Winter Park area just now becoming more Democratic. So that, I think, is kind of the first area that you really see. There are some cities that just don't have as much of an impact anymore that might have been a lot more Republican as, let's say, 20 years ago. So you take Apopka. Right, Apopka was a place that definitely, I think, had more of an influence. It was kind of like even this Dixiecrat type of old thing, conservative Democrat area for a while. But, it's just not as important in Orange County as it was back in the day. And then you got some places that are, fundamentally switching and changing quite a bit. And most of this is, west on West Colonial, going out towards Ocoee going out towards Winter Garden. You're just seeing that start to build up. And a lot of, I would say, the upper middle class homes that you are seeing build west of Windermere have just been really more democratic, kind of these 55-45 precincts, than what you see in Windermere itself, which, even though it's changing, it's still like the one Republican dot when it comes to Orange County, because you do, if you look at the places just outside of Windermere, if you go to Sand Lake Hills, you go over by Universal and whatnot, you do see kind of one precinct red, one precinct blue, one precinct red, blue, and it kind of alternates really close. And then the final thing that I think is the real big change, if we're looking at from 1990 to, let's say, 2004 or 5, is a large Hispanic population in South Orange County. So you didn't have as big of a population back then. And essentially now from Williamsburg all the way over to the airport and south of Sand Lake Road, and even north of Sand Lake, if you go up 436, there's a large Hispanic population. That's been a huge game changer as far as the county becoming more democratic. But it has also been kind of one of the reasons why we see people like Darren Soto not doing as well in the last election compared to this, compared to previous ones.
Right, with the Latino vote in Osceola and Orange beginning to trend, just like the Latino vote in the rest of the country, quite frankly. I mean, it's no different than what's happening nationally. One other thing I wanted to talk to you about before we get out of here is UCF. So the growth of the University of Central Florida in going from being like this kind of community school that was in the eastern part of Orange County, that was kind of like, like a safety school. Maybe a lot of people in Orlando viewed it as a community college, like an extension of Valencia for years, to being like a proper four-year university with a reputation and with the kind of student bodies you get at other major universities in the country, combined with the urban nature and all the demographic changes you've talked about in Orange County. I would also point out Orange County, outside of Broward. Broward is a very unionized county, but obviously always been the most democratic urban county in the state, or at least for the last 30 years. Orange now is a heavily union-influenced county when you compare it to like Hillsborough and Duval and Miami-Dade. Right, unions are more powerful in Orange County. But Dave, UCF, the growth of UCF, I think, has had a lot to do alongside everything you mentioned in Orange County trending really heavy blue.
Right. I mean, it's not just UCF itself. It's all the neighborhoods that you have west of UCF. So you got to remember, once you kind of get almost immedately north of UCF, you're in Seminole County, right? So you immediately get into Seminole County. But when you go down to 50, like 50 and north, if you're looking at 436, Alafaya, and places like that, those used to be kind of, let's say, the more moderate Republican area. And if you go west all the way to Winter Park, that's what that used to be. In the mid-90s, those areas started to change and started to just have, the Democrats do a little bit stronger, a little bit better. All of a sudden, you take these areas that used to be Tom Feeney's, strong areas, and they weren't anymore. And I think now with the University of Central Florida, that campus has become, some might say very large, I might say very bloated, right? Yeah. That you have to have the support system, the faculty, the staff, everyone else to be there, and they're going to live in and around that area. So now what you're doing is you're seeing a lot of those precincts now just starting to tip over, 5049, 5148, 5149, things like that. Because if you look at a lot of the precincts in and around UCF, they're slight Democratic precincts. And I think when we look at this upcoming election, if we're really going to laser focus on Orange County, those might be the ones to really see, if we want to see how the, white middle-class voters are going to do. Some of those precincts are going to be the ones to look at that might give us an idea of a national trend as well.
Great, Dave. Thank you so much for joining us. Let everybody know where to find Voting Trend here on YouTube and then also on Substack.
Okay, yeah, so if you go to YouTube, just Google or just search Voting Trend, you'll find it. It's usually the first one there. And my Substack, which is probably going to be what I'm most active on after the election, just go to votingtrend.substack.com and go ahead and subscribe. It's free to subscribe, so I'm looking forward to having anyone who's interested on board.